Let's see. Item 6D, to the CEO's office.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a public hearing as required under our CDBG guidelines. What we're talking about today is the $35,000 PTA, which is Planning Technical Assistance Grant, and it really is, you have included in your packets what we achieved for that $35,000 and how we were able to leverage significant amounts of money out of that planning grant. So this is just a public hearing to close the loop formally on what the performance was on that grant. So if you'll open the public hearing and take any comments from the public, then we can move forward.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Let's see. So at this point, I'll open the public hearing, and to the clerk, is there any correspondence or telephone calls received on this item?
No.
We received the staff presentation. Public comment. Is there any public comment or staff comment to the item? Seeing no one step forward, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for action. Item 6D.
Does the gentleman want to talk?
No. He's here to answer any questions the board might have.
Move the recommended motion.
For the record, I'm Craig Schlatter, Community Development Manager at the Community Development Commission of Mendocino County, here to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. A motion has been made to accept the recommended motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for the recommended motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Passes unanimously. Okay. Trying to catch up a little on time here. Let's move to item 9A, a timed item for 11:15. Discussion possible action regarding 1, adoption of resolution certifying the EIR for the Mill Creek Dam project, and 2, adoption of findings and approval project for managing the upper, middle, and lower dams on Mill Creek, including adoption of mitigation measures for sediment release into the creek in December 2004. County Council and Mendocino Water Agency Director Roland Sanford.
Okay, for the record, my name is Roland Sanford. I'm the General Manager of the Mendocino County Water Agency. What I'd like to do is just a little bit of, I'm cognizant of trying to catch up here on time-wise, but I'd like to provide a little bit of background information on the Mill Creek EIR and where things are headed, and I believe Mr. Zotter will talk about some of the procedural legal issues associated with the EIR. By way of background, the Mill Creek EIR is something that was required, California Department of Fish and Game required the county to prepare the EIR, and to a very large degree dictated the scope of that EIR. And basically what Fish and Game told the county to do is to prepare an EIR that would address the cleanup and mitigation of the sediment release that occurred in 2004, and would also address long-term operations and maintenance of the Mill Creek dams. And I think it's fair to say that this project began under what I would characterize as fairly tense conditions. Tense in the sense that California Fish and Game, as well as some of the resource agencies, were not particularly happy with the county's performance prior to and immediately after the sediment release. And I think tense also in the sense that there was a feeling by county staff that the county was being railroaded into removing the dams. Now, happily, things changed here when in 2006, California Department of Fish and Game reorganized, and the county was assigned to a different fish and game region. The tough part here is that it occurred right about the time that the draft EIR came out, so that why it was very helpful to have some new faces and new perspective on the issues here. It did create some delays with respect to the Region 2 Fish and Game folks coming up to speed, as well as just some issues within the county, within the water agency in terms of project priorities. But I would like to point out that the Region 2 Fish and Game folks have been very cooperative, and finally today we are ready to move forward on the final EIR. Now, before getting into the specifics of the EIR, I think you need to know where the EIR fits into the big picture, and the quickest way to describe this is that the EIR provides a to-do list of items that need to be done in order for the county to satisfy the requirements of the agencies with respect to the sediment release and long-term operations and maintenance of the dams. And I prepared a memo. I won't, again, in the interest of time, unless there's any specific questions, I did prepare a memo summarizing what that to-do list consisted of. Moving on here, the last note I wanted to touch on is just some specifics about the EIR, and that is in terms of what it consists of and just a little bit of background there. As I mentioned earlier, the EIR addresses a number of alternatives, everything from removing all the dams to retaining all the dams. Now, in the public meetings that were held during the scoping of the EIR, the draft EIR, the written comments on the draft EIR, public sentiment was overwhelmingly for the retention of at least the upper dam and the middle dam, which is alternative 2, and preferably for all 3 dams, which is alternative A. And I think that this is significant in a county where there is an abundance and diversity of opinions, that there was such overwhelmingly support for retention of at least the 2 functional reservoirs. Now, the resource agencies, most notably National Marine Fisheries Service and initially the California Department of Fish and Games, were the only entities that strongly advocated for removal of the dams. In their comments on the draft EIR, and even prior to that, National Marine Fisheries Service recommended alternative D, which is the removal of all 3 dams. Fish and Game, while Region 5 initially strongly advocated for the removal of all 3 dams, as the project moved to Region 2, Region 2 took a somewhat different approach and basically acknowledged that retention of the dams was a viable option. Finally, from the beginning, the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, which is a player in this with respect to the sediment release, even the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board recommended selections of either alternative B, C, or D. And so at this point in time, what we have is one agency that recommended removal of the dams, and with respect to the public and all the other agencies, at least the retention of the upper and middle reservoirs. So with respect to the EIR, the final EIR, the preferred alternative that was identified in the EIR is alternative A, retention of all 3 reservoirs, or alternative B. Why? Because basically these 2 alternatives best address the overwhelmingly public desire to retain the 3 reservoirs, to keep them as a functional entity, and secondly because the dams in the parklands, while they're not certainly not in the best shape, they still are a very valuable asset, and alternatives A and B address the need to invest in and enhance that asset, not basically use precious general fund dollars to eliminate it. So alternative A versus B, which one should it be? It's staff's recommendation that the board select alternative A, and here's why. The only difference between alternative A and B is that under alternative B, the lower dam would be removed. Now, well, certainly removal of this dam does provide certain political benefits to the agencies in terms of maybe from their perspective, there's one less dam in the world. Practically